Hey guys, welcome to Crucible 5. Um, Glad that you guys are here. We're really excited this time to have Titus Lunter on board to give you guys some crits.
And
Hey Titus, what's up?
yeah, I'm good, man. How's it going?
Good, good. So, this is going to be an interesting one um, because we've got some stuff to talk about. But before we get started, Titus, do you want to just run down really quickly? I'm sure most people here know already kind of what you've done, but you want to quickly run down what you've been working on and what your focus is?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the industry since around 2009, 2010, working on all sorts of things. I've mostly done environment art for games, and lately also more illustration. So my primary client right now is Wizards of the Coast, and I work for Magic the Gathering a lot. But in the past, I've worked for companies like Sony and Ubisoft on titles like The Division and Killzone and what have you, a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. And you guys are lucky. We've got Titus here to give you some crits on your work. So um, I think yeah, I think this one is slightly different. I just basically we looked at the entries and no one is actually going to be winning spots this time, and it was
Dun dun dun.
da-da-da. So if you guys are here to figure out who won, sorry, no one won, but I think it's a really great opportunity to talk about some really important stuff, which is awesome because we're all here about self-development.
Yeah,
It's not about the winning. So um,
exactly. So I think, yeah, in many respects, it's actually a good thing. So now we get to talk a little bit more about design and stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. And how important it actually is to apply this stuff. So yeah, why don't we just get started with some of the basic things that I think I guess went wrong. So
Mm.
I'll just yeah leave that over to you, and I'll just chime in with extra stuff if I feel like it. But yeah, go for it,
Sure.
man.
Yeah. So we were just talking before the stream as well, which was kind of cool just to see if we were on the same page with this. But one of the main things that was really important for this brief is kind of twofold. One is like with any other brief, is the question how close can you stick to the brief and do you understand what it's about? And the other part is figuring out what the underlying question was for the brief, right? Because every brief is actually just a summarized question of I need something, blah. And the one in this case wasn't really as much about patterns, but it was about understanding the concept that form follows function. And this is actually insanely important with any kind of design task that you do, is the closer you want to hit that mark, that form really follows function. So in this case, we had the idea of a pattern. You come up with a pattern, and then you derive all the um, functionality firstly from the efficiency of the pattern, and then you derive the shape language off of that. So one of the cool things that I was looking at when I was making this brief is that nature is ridiculously good at coming up with cool and efficient patterns.
Mm.
I listed a few already, like the honeycomb, and that doesn't just happen, right? It's not like they like that shape, um,
Yep.
and that's where it come from. Nature is really good in identifying its surroundings and adapting to it. Now, in the brief, right, we mentioned create an alien landscape in architecture. So here you have kind of carte blanche, which is sort of scary. That is a whole bunch of information, but you get to set the rules of how the patterns form on this world and what they're meant to do, right?
Yep.
So it's a pretty big thing, but you have to figure out, okay, what kind of planet is this going to be? What kind of growth are we going to have? And I was looking at growth structures of minerals and plants and all sorts of other really cool things.
Mm.
And I came to this thing that it says that patterns in nature are an evolutionary reaction in the quest for maximum efficiency. So this is
Hmm.
pretty dope. It
That's
can
cool.
just go to anything. They react to their thing, like the evolution of the snowflake because of the physics as our atmosphere changed from being like really humid and warm to slightly more cool. The actual shape of the snowflake is changing as well. And I thought, wow,
That's neat.
that's kind of badass,
Yeah.
So that's a big part. And then the other one is obviously how close can you stick to the brief and identifying what the brief is. Now, working as a professional, one of the main things that you need to do is you need to not only stick to the brief, because that's what people pay you to do, right?
Yeah.
They don't pay you to do your own thing. They pay you to solve their problem. That's kind of the thing. They have this problem and
Yeah.
they want you to solve it. One part of that, again, just to break it in two, one part of that is actually solving the problem. And the other part is figuring out if the person who asked the question actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Sometimes they don't know the question
Yeah.
that they were supposed to be asking. Yep.
No, exactly, right?
Hmm.
When people say, "Oh, can you design me a car?" That's like, okay, I'm gonna need a little bit more input than that. Is this a sports car? Is this like an SUV? What exactly are you asking of me? And even if you get them to quite specifics, they don't. They think that they're asking for a car, but what they're actually asking for is for you to solve a whole bunch of physics problems. From engine efficiency to shock breakers to brakes to what have you, and the whole production process that comes along with it. So trying to figure out how to stay best on point and what that is and how much work that actually means it's kind of crucial. And that's what we were talking about before the stream, where we kind
Hmm.
of felt that out of the briefs that we were seeing, none of the people really stuck to that brief close enough, right?
Yep.
Because we were asking for like 3 billion. It doesn't matter if you did like one building or no building. But the thing is, properly identifying that problem. And in this case, the problem was what kind of planet are we on? What kind of civilization is this, right?
Hmm.
That is something that we didn't see.
Yeah. And we sort of specified in the brief, a process, I guess, which is design a pattern, apply the pattern to architecture, make it alien. But we didn't particularly specify, think about what the criteria of the planet, the criteria of the environment, the people, the aliens who built it. We didn't specify you had to think about that kind of stuff in order to help you with the design and apply that design. We kind of gave you just a workflow, I guess. But so that was kind of a hidden thing that we'd like to. I guess we would have liked to have seen more. But not only that, the actual workflow process that we gave you wasn't really applied, and that's even in black and white, and so that's for me anyway why um, uh, the most of, if not all of the entries just didn't hit the mark in all of those three aspects. So um,
But
yeah.
it's a tricky thing as well.
Hmm.
Working as a concept artist, I had this question in another interview the other day, talking about, so what is your daily kind of routine like as a concept artist? Is it painting, or how much of it is painting? And
Oh yeah.
aside from the actual pre-production stage where you're not you're problem solving, but you're problem solving light. All right, you're kind of doing the broad strokes, and almost anything goes, because even if you completely miss the mark, it's something that you can then tick off and we're like, okay, this is not the direction that we want to go in. But in the actual production stages of big game titles, more often than not, there's not anyone to tell you this is what you should do today.
Mm.
That's up to you to figure that out. So most of the day is actually picking a problem and then talking to people on how to solve it. So most of the time, as you know, for me as a concept artist, I wasn't painting. I was red penning stuff. I was just talking to people, making notes, grabbing a screenshot from the game and just doing like a quick red pen scribble over, like, is this what you mean, or does this
Right.
work with the metrics, et cetera, et cetera. So um,
Hmm.
being autonomous and really running with any given problem or assignment is crucial, probably the most important thing you can have. And this is why people sometimes don't understand that when when people say, like, okay, you need good people skills, you need to be social,
Yeah.
and
Right.
like, why? But you're painting stuff. Like, no, you're not. You're, well,
Yeah.
sometimes, or you're mostly talking to people, you're trying to figure stuff out. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
you have to be social.
Hmm.
So that's kind of fun. So looking through these, like, I have the sheet in front of me now, like,
Uh,
with all the entries, right?
okay. So hang on.
Um,
Let me just go onto screen share. So I'll just follow along with um, what you're talking about.
cool. I figure
Sorry.
we can talk about it as
Yep.
we'll probably hit like other stuff as well.
Okay.
Uh,
Just so
oh,
you
last
know,
thing,
your little webcam is on screen as well.
that's totally fine. People can admire my luscious hair, right?
So it's
Freshly
only.
washed, so it's all over the place. It's all over the place. So that's fine. Um, I was going to say that there's a fantastic video shared by Autodesk, which is dealing with this kind of design, and how computers will probably solve most of our engineering design problems for us in terms of how to make a chair. So if you just go to the Autodesk Facebook page, and I'll actually link it in chat.
Awesome.
I think it's on here. This is a fantastic thing to kind of check out later on, talking about design and stuff, right? All right, so here we go. I think the first entry that we're looking at is from Yam K. Um,
Yep.
and I have to say, I mean, the rendering is really good. I
Hmm.
like it. It is hand painted. Oh yeah, yeah, actually fun. One of the things why I said that it was going to be hand painted is not because it's fun to torture you guys and not having to use photo bash, but there's something about hand painting which forces you to think very carefully on what you
Mm.
um, want to put down,
Yeah.
which is kind of like good, because one of the issues that you run into, or that I see people run into when they do these kind of assignments, is that they go too fast,
Right.
and they go so fast that they kind of skip a few steps. So usually when you say, okay, look, hand paint this instead, they slow the whole thing down because
Right.
they're a bit daunted and go like, oh man, I have to hand paint the whole thing, um,
Yep.
which is good, because then that thought process starts. I
There's
like this.
also.
I recognize.
Sorry. There. I just want to
Sorry, go ahead.
add one thing. There's also the idea that when you're using photo bash or design elements, a lot of the time the design elements that you're picking from the photographs overtake the design if you're not careful, and can
Yeah,
overpower you, and that especially when you're starting off, and that it's good to not have that happen and just be able to design on your own, because
absolutely.
later on it just becomes a speed tool, I guess. But
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's a good point. I
Mm.
fell into that pit trap in the beginning of my career myself,
Mm.
where I learned how to paint the other way around. You're supposed to do the fundamentals and then photo batch, but I was photo batching so much that got me to learn the fundamentals. And now looking back, and I was like, that was probably the least efficient 2 years of my life. I could have done that.
Yeah, I kind of have similar development. I did that, and then I realized, oh, I gotta go back. I'm trying
Yeah,
to fly before I can run, before I can
yeah,
walk.
but it's fine.
Yeah.
There's really no one way to do it.
Hmm.
And talking about this entry that I'm seeing here, um, this kind of bismuth pattern is really cool. You can actually make this bismuth yourself, which is kind of like a loose way of saying it. Like, you can make it yourself because you need a whole bunch of equipment and chemicals, but technically you can make this stuff yourself.
Right.
It's this really awesome way, and it's a great way of showing that how nature actually found a cool way of growing different patterns, because this is a crystalline structure, but it grows in rectangles.
Hmm.
it's really fascinating stuff. Material called bismuth, um, and as far as good-looking images go, this is a good-looking one. I like it. Little exploration vehicle in there going on. In terms of the brief, where it's a space center infrastructure housing based on a pattern, not really seeing
Nope.
any of that in here.
Nope.
But I appreciate the image for what it is, so I
Yep.
think that's cool.
Yeah,
I,
I think it's painted quite well, and I love
hmm.
the colors. The colors are great. Nice juicy
Yeah, no,
oranges
I
down
agree.
there. But yeah, in terms of besides that sort of structure that you're talking about, the other aspects of the brief were definitely not hit. So um,
Well, that's, I mean, that's fine.
it's fine. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to look at.
Yep.
Uh,
All
I'm
right.
scrolling down,
Yep. So cracked
getting
skull.
to exactly cracked skull. So I'm actually going to scroll down one image further
Okay.
to kind of like where it happens, where the upside down
Mm-hmm.
um, mushroom is happening, which I think is probably one of the more fun things in there, because that's a real kind of core pattern. But this is, and I don't want to repeat myself too much with this kind of stuff, but
Mm.
this is what we saw most happening with other entries in this brief, right? That you find a pattern, and then you apply the pattern to a design, but it isn't integrated.
Mm.
So does that make sense? Like you have a shape and you just kind of like drape the pattern over the shape instead of
Yep.
having that pattern determine the shape. And one of the things that we'll see it further on as well, but I'm just thinking of it now, is that we see a lot of people with these patterns sticking it on top,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
Whereas you
a
look at the beehive,
it's almost an
it's made
after.
of it, you know?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I'm like totally interrupting you like four times in a row now.
Sometimes it's hard to jump in when, and no, I think, yeah, that's totally right. A lot of the times the patterns that you guys came up with were almost an afterthought embellishment on top of some other design that you did. So that's basically, yeah, what we're talking about. Or, a lot of the
Yeah,
structures
exactly.
themselves weren't informed by the patterns. So you'd get, I mean, some of you did, like with Cracked, he definitely did use, the mushrooms as and circles, I guess, as the main design form.
Yeah. I mean, in his top image, in the first image he has, it's a city, but you can see that it's sort of, or at least it looks to be influenced by like a mushroom field, right?
Mm-hmm.
In how that does. But what I would like to see more, if you go down that route, is looking at how are mushrooms seeded? What is their
Mm.
growth pattern? What kind of clusters do they grow? Is it like with
Yeah.
trees that they grow highest to get closest to the sun and the ones lower die, or is this
Yep.
a different kind of spread? What is their shape relation? Because there's a lot of fun stuff happening. You'll probably start to see it really soon when, or actually it's already flipped for you because you're in New Zealand. But when the seasons change,
Yep.
what we're definitely going to see here in Europe is you're going to see a lot of mushrooms coming up. And one of the things that's kind of cool is that you can actually see where mushrooms have, where trees have been, right? Because the mushrooms have a really long life. A few generations after the tree is gone, will still be around where the
Mm-hmm.
base of the tree was.
Right.
Um, so, so their kind of formation process is really kind of cool. Um,
Uh,
but
and
aside from that, I'm sort of,
and just to add one more thing, nature. Go to nature. That
yeah,
if you want inspiration, not just for materials or what, but for design, for basically anything, go to nature. Nature is your one big uh, playpen, I guess. It's awesome. So that's the
absolutely.
always the first go to, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's good they actually bring it up in those terms as well, because the one of the things that comes up a lot when talking about designing stuff that doesn't exist, whether it's in the future or an alien world, is when people say, okay, but they go way overboard because they want to be unique and design something that nobody's ever seen before. But the problem with that is if it is something that we've never seen before, we won't recognize it for what it is.
Mm.
And in entertainment, one of the most important things is that people actually do recognize what it is, because in games you probably
Yeah.
need to interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand what you're looking for. In movies, it's a little less so because you have slightly more context and narrative room to explain what it is,
Right.
and it might not be that important because the audience doesn't need to interact one-on-one with it. But
Mm-hmm.
this is the bottom line. Everything in entertainment, everything needs to be inspired based on something that's already existing and real.
Yeah.
It needs to have some sort of basis in the reality that we know in order for it to be successful. And nature can be insanely weird in all of it, especially when you look at like the cell level of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The nanostructures. But even within those, you get to see patterns and structures that make sense and are related to what we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the thing that I mentioned the Ware-Phelan structure, right, in the brief, as this weird thing because the 2008 Beijing Olympic swimming pool is made out of that. And it's absolutely fascinating because if you look at the metal frame for that, it's just bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers.
Right.
And it was the basis for the Hive series that I did. So,
Right.
but
Yep.
the fun thing is that it's soap bubbles. You think, oh, soap bubbles, they're so random, the way that soap bubbles form. And then some guy figured out, like, actually, no, it's not random at all. There's a mathematical equation behind this. And you can just, if you put that in, you can make any structure you want with it in the pattern of soap bubbles.
Yeah. Awesome. It's just so awesome.
That's just crazy to me. I'm like, wow, that's someone took the time to figure that out. And they're like, well, actually, if I look at soap bubbles long enough, I'm sure I can figure this out, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for us looking at it, it's just this visual treat, and for them, it's like, no, it's just a formula. You can figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
Cool.
yep. I think we've talked about cracked skulls. So what would you what's actually no? Let's just keep going because we don't have too much time. So what might happen is if you guys want like some other crit besides like on the technical sort of image making of your piece, then I'm happy. Piotr and I are happy to do that on that stuff. But I guess for this stream we're just going to concentrate on how you didn't hit or you know where you could improve. I shouldn't be so mean.
Keep telling how wrong everybody is.
If I hammer it in, maybe it'll go. No. Okay, so next one is Patback 98.
Yeah. So actually, the top image is the least interesting of all to me, which is maybe a shitty thing to say because there's clearly the most attention went into that one. But the top image, the reason why I say that is the top image is pretty clear. It's pretty self-explanatory. And I like the exploration stuff a lot more. So a little thumbnail that he has of it within his thumbnail sheet is actually really interesting. And for me, the most interesting one in there is the top right one.
Oh, yep.
And then the right one second from the bottom. There's a lot more circle exploration going on there. I mean, it's not necessarily strictly designed because they're like environment thumbnails, but there's a cool kind of interaction between nature and man-made. Whereas the top image is just the flats, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's these organic shapes, and then you know, of the landscape, and then there's the obviously man-made or alien-made, I guess, shapes in there. I kind of like that in the third row to the right, on the right-hand side, the sort of mushrooms sticking out that like you see on tree trunks. That's kind of a cool idea, but it's
cool. It's a cool thought where you kind of see this interaction. Like humans do not have a very symbiotic relationship with the Earth. Like in general, right? We just kind of put whatever we want, wherever we want, just kind of like smack it down, whatever. And in a lot of movies, you see architecture being this very symbiotic thing with the environment where that race is very conscious about how they build things and where they build things. And like,
Right.
how are you economically viable? You know,
Yeah.
how do you, where's your industry coming from, which is the primary driving factor behind economy, like whether we want it or not,
Hmm.
we need industry to be rich and buy useless stuff. And this is like really this is like thinking way too far down the pipeline. But
Sure.
uh, just another thing to mention on this, right? They are showing with like charts and demographs that countries that consume more power, like actual energy,
Hmm.
and where the demand for energy is highest, they're obviously the richest.
Right.
And this is not, you think, oh yeah, it's because of household appliances and people need to turn on their computers. But you know, speaking in gigawatts, that's an almost
It's
negligible
tiny.
portion. It's
Right.
yeah, it's industry, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and you can see that growing nations have this demand for power,
Hmm.
like they want it, they want to consume all the energy, but can't because they haven't done their infrastructure properly, or they
Right.
don't have the money to do that. And this is a fantastic kind of premise for any sort of civilization that you want to set up, is asking how much power,
Yeah.
in whatever way, shape, or form they have it, are they consuming, and do they do that as a whole or only parts of the planet, and what's kind of the dynamic because of that, you
Hmm.
know?
I mean, there is that, I forget what it's called. There's that scale of civilizations and the power, the general overall power usage that they use. So, um,
Mm,
there's ones that utilize entire planets, and then they go further by utilizing the sun's energy, and then further
yeah.
on by that. So that, things are categorized by how much power and energy that we use. It's a pretty cool concept to think
Was
about
that like a
building.
Dyson sphere?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, see, but I mean, you're talking here about just, you know, an image for a challenge. There's no need for you to go that deep. But speaking
Yeah.
from like a studio perspective, when you're in house, we talk about that stuff all the time, just to influence them all the time. It's going that deep. Like, in the division, we just had some graffiti, right? But I was researching the French Revolution to come up with like a cool nickname of this gang which had formed after, you know, the elite was overthrown, because it's like
Mm,
kind of like that gang felt like it was like the French Revolution, you know, down with the king and all that kind of stuff.
right.
It's, you don't need to do that, but
Yeah.
it adds some stuff, you know.
I mean, it also shows how you're thinking, I guess, or a way of thinking,
Yeah.
because you're going beyond just, okay, how do I make a cool image out of a pattern? There's more informing it. It may not show itself directly in the image, but it goes in to inform it, and it's kind of like the world building aspect of storytelling as well. You don't have to show it all
Hmm.
in the image, but even a tiny bit of your thinking can go into it to explain a little bit. It does add to
Yeah.
it does add to it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
should we? Yeah, that's a really good point about the thinking a bit deeper.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one. I definitely
Hmm.
like the one that you picked out with the kind of like the mushroom structure. That's
Hmm.
cool. So if
Yeah.
you want to continue on that Padback, then that's definitely a cool thing to explore. So we're coming
Yep.
up on Achi now.
Actually. Yep.
Uh, Really fun shapes.
Mm.
That top left thumbnail is really cool with all of them aligned. I love kind of like the dynamics which is going on there,
Hmm.
um, and the fact that this is quite a chaotic kind of pattern.
Mm.
So I'm really wondering with this is, you know, what's the functionality of this? Is this growing? Are they growing it?
Yep.
um, because there's like this tree-like shape in here. So I figured like, oh, you know, maybe this is like a genetically modified super seed that they can just plant, and this big storm, which I can see, just rains down the kind of nutrients that it needs, and they just
Mm.
grow their buildings like that.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they need to do is like fly over it and plant the seeds or shoot it, or maybe they're even shot from another planet and they
Yeah.
land here, and that's how they terraform. You
Yeah.
know, there's so many cool avenues.
Awesome.
But the fact that I'm thinking about it in that way is cool. You know, that's what that piece is already doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
agree
I
with that.
yeah, I
That's
like that.
Yeah, it's cool. It is just the I mean, for me, in terms of it being constructed like a deliberate construction, that's the only thing
Hmm.
for me that I think it doesn't quite um, sort of make the mark. It does look more like an organic structure, and that's fine
Yeah.
because, but it seems more natural than constructed. I guess there's a door or something that circle, um,
Yeah.
in the middle uh, to show.
I guess the one that is on the left-hand side of the thumbnails,
The thumbnails itself,
on the
yeah.
second row,
Yep.
uh, that's a pretty like crafted structure with the big arch in the back. I think
Yes.
I like that more. It has a really nice language to it.
Yeah, actually, the thumbnails have a bit more development in them actually than the final,
Hmm.
which is
But again, there's tons of
interesting. Hmm.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
there's tons of room for it to grow. That's what I was gonna say. There's just a
Hmm.
lot of room. I think that's like kind of the baseline with all the entries right there. There's a lot of room for them to grow and develop. They just need to really hit that mark where, and we're gonna come up with Miracoli now. If we're scrolling down,
Yep.
where what we were saying before really applies. Like here, the pattern making is really obvious, which is great,
Hmm.
but it sticks to having an explaining. Now, I love all these thumbnails. The shape language in these thumbnails is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm not sure if it would hold up necessarily to scrutiny in terms of when we start talking about functionality, like what do these things do? Um, and that's where I was getting to. Like, you don't need to treat the pattern as plating, right? The pattern is the governing structure, which indicates how these buildings are going to form, how they're built, and why they are built that way. How they look is kind of just an afterthought of that. That's just kind of like the end, the kind of like the total of the sum, right? Is how it looks.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
that being said, I love
sorry.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean this one is probably in terms of technicals, the like the rendering of the final piece is it's really well done, for the style that it is. Like it's a solid piece, but yeah, the pattern you did some really cool. You haven't actually even showed. I think there was way more in the whip thread as well. He did lots and lots of iterations
Hmm.
of sort of those orthographics of the side. So that was really cool. But yep, the patterns that were picked were sort of pasted on and didn't inform the entire structure or the fundamentals of what goes to make up the structure. So um,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I love looking in the whip thread. I was looking through it like throughout
Mm.
the month to see the things updating. There were a lot of really cool things on there. People going on really interesting tangents with it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Oh,
that was pretty cool to see.
that's cool. You were checking the whip thread. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wasn't sure how much of an should interact and where the finals were going to go.
Yeah.
Now looking back, I think like, oh, maybe I should have said something. We were talking before about maybe not explaining things too much because such a
Hmm.
big part of being a concept artist is learning how to be autonomous.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I mean, when I first started, I really was too scared to do any of that kind of stuff. I was like, oh man, should I go talk to people or figure this stuff on my own? Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I need permission. But you
Right.
don't. You just need to. It's better just to make a decision and do it completely wrong.
Hmm.
And then people saying, why did you do this? And then you can explain why you did it. And then they'll say, okay, love the process. It's wrong. We didn't want this result, but at least
Yeah.
you got the process down, and then they know how to guide you. But if they constantly have to tell you what to do,
Hmm.
that takes up a bunch of their time as well. And they're your supervisors in the beginning will probably have something better to do than every 10 minutes tell you
Yep.
this is your new task. So
Yeah.
um,
Hand holding is not something that anyone really wants to do.
no,
So
no.
okay.
So in
So
that sense,
should we go to Lord ratio?
yeah, Ladratio. I was really blown away by this entry in terms of style. Like I did
Mm.
not expect to see this kind of stuff at all. So
Yeah.
it was really cool and refreshing to see this. I would like as an entry like coming in. I think this is like really cool just to see like, oh hey, look, the color and
Yeah.
a different take on things. Where take a second look and you see these tiny buildings,
Hmm.
kind of like being tangled up in these huge vines and stuff,
Yeah.
which is that's really cool.
Yeah.
A lot of traditional stuff as well.
Yeah, I really like it, and Lord Ratio does some cool trad stuff. I think he's
Mm.
yeah, mostly does trad. I kind of like some of the sketches as well, because it shows that he was working. It's a little bit hard to see, but it shows that he was working on different sort of shape language and whoops, and
Mm.
you know, I guess inspired a lot more by nature as well. Um,
Yeah, the way
that's the
that
thing.
nature's being taken into account with the crystal pattern and stuff, that's a
Yeah.
really good um, starting point for that.
Mm-hmm.
I really love seeing that.
Yeah.
The day and night and simplifying it, and then taking a look at the structure. I mean, it goes a little bit when we're looking at some of the other stuff. It goes a little bit off base, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
am I wait? Am I looking at
and
another
again,
thing right now?
okay, and again, the sort of the requirement of infrastructure,
Oh yeah.
and showing what the different functions are of the various areas weren't quite hit in this, I guess. It seems like
Uh,
you just
n
picked,
no.
you picked your own sort of story, and it's cool. The design is kind of cool, but yeah, that in terms of that
Mm.
brief, I think that's where the
But
weak
this is
point is.
typically kind of the stuff that we would see that would lead to this brief, right? Where you have the initial exploration,
Right.
and you feed that into, the whole pipeline, and then at some point your superiors, like the art director, will say, okay, that's cool.
Hmm.
You see, like we see a lot of nature stuff that's going on in here,
Hmm.
and we want to take that further, but we want to take that to like a unique place. So,
Hmm.
can you come up with a unique pattern for us, which then inspires the rest of the design? So that's, uh, you know it's along the same lines, but it's I think a little earlier in kind of like the design stages, right?
Right. Actually, that kind of brings up a thought. Do you want to have a little chat about um, or your thoughts on the collaborative nature of working in a studio or with a design team with art directors? It's not
Mm.
a lot of the pieces that you do aren't actually yours alone. You're working on them with
Oh yeah, no.
with input from multiple places. So do you want to have a little? What do you have to
Yeah,
say about
sure,
that?
yeah. I mean, absolutely. For me, like on a pure practical point of view, where talking about the amount of paint you do on one image, it has been a pretty singular experience. Like, not a lot of people will paint on your image.
Hmm.
It's mostly you, maybe a little touching up, but the image does not just arise from you painting it. You get feedback from everywhere. It's most likely not your idea to begin with, and then you get art directed and then feedback from everyone else, like around you, from all the other concept people. So one of the things that you need to learn to live with, well, not live with, but actually embrace as being a good and positive thing, is that you're probably going to do a whole bunch of iterations on every one piece,
Hmm.
like a whole bunch of iterations, and it's never yours.
Right.
You always need to have other people helping you out, just like you said.
Hmm.
So every piece is this highly collaborative thing, because you you're not there to get better at painting. You're there because you have 10 weeks until the next milestone, and something needs to get done.
Right.
Um, and you are a part of that machine.
Hmm.
And depending on how fun the machine is in itself to work for, that kind of increases your level of fun in the job. But some studios are a little bit more grindy than the others,
Right.
where sometimes you have more input, and having more input is always fun.
Hmm.
You can take a little bit more ownership, but it doesn't matter how much freedom you have. You always work within the framework
Hmm.
of what people are providing for you, and you need to do a good job. So,
Yep.
yeah, like having that back and forth, and understanding that feedback and iteration is okay, and not get upset. No, when someone says to you, actually, I don't like this building. You need to do this all over again. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It often
Absolutely.
doesn't feel that way, but
Hmm.
um, especially when it's I've had it plenty of times where I know that you can't attach yourself too much, and then you do, and then it goes through the whole pipeline, and the one thing you love is, of course, the one thing that gets scrapped, or like, no, we really didn't like this. Like, of
Yeah,
course it is.
yeah.
Um, you feel it, it's like, oh man.
I've actually been
Um,
really lucky to be able to avoid, not that I've worked in studios before, but I've been really lucky to avoid having my babies taken away from me. So
oh
I
man,
know it's gonna happen. It's gonna come.
like yeah, kill your darlings,
Yeah,
man. That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
famous saying.
Yep. All
It's
right.
worse as a game designer. That's like every single day, like the
Right.
whole day is kill your darlings. Um,
Yep. Okay, so
yeah.
should we just carry on to Neo Patagon?
Yeah. I was mixing it up before. This was actually what I was saying with where it was looking at the day night and all the patterns. Like I love
Ah,
the
okay.
intricacy of some of the patterns that are happening. That's cool.
Hmm.
Um, and this is where we actually see the cosmoport, the infrastructure, and the housing for the first time. All
Yep.
three of them,
Yep.
which is great. Um, my only point here is that uh, I can't I can't follow the steps that lead up to the conclusion. So we're seeing the conclusion of, like, for example, the housing, right? We see the conclusion, like this is the end result of this is how the houses look. Uh, but what I'd be really interested in seeing is how did it get to be this way? And it harkens back to that. The one of the principal things as a concept artist is that you can never say I don't know when someone asks you why.
Mm.
When they're talking about your design and they ask you why is this pipe there, why is this thing red, you can never say, oh, I don't know, I just kind of did whatever, because that's not your job is to solve problems.
Right.
So you're always supposed to, oh, I did this because
Yeah.
and I would love to see that for all of this stuff. When I ask you, oh, this housing, this looks interesting because it's like way more vertical than I would expect it to be, or you're
Hmm.
like, why is that? And I'm like, okay, and then comes this really interesting explanation, well, hopefully. And that's what I'd love to see in these.
Yep. Absolutely. Just having a quick look to see if there's anything. I mean, the one thing about Neo that, well, all of us at CC know is that she does put in a lot of work up front.
Oh, it looks, yeah.
Like
I mean, that's
she's,
obvious. You can see
yeah,
that
she does
instantly.
tons of that stuff. So, um, yeah, I mean, I guess for me, for
But
the piece itself, I guess the main thing was that this big, it's definitely like a spaceport or something like that, but the whole
mhm,
focus is going towards the ship itself rather
yeah,
than the other stuff, which even though she's got it in there, it seems to play a side
mhm,
role. So that's my, in terms of choices of what you're going to show um, to hit
yeah,
a
for
particular
sure.
brief, then I would say that's probably a big one. Um,
But the color choices and the consistency of the pattern is really cool. I
yep.
love a little note on the ship itself that says main form inspirations in eggplant. I mean,
Right.
th that's fantastic because
Hmm.
why does the ship look like that? Because it's inspired by eggplant.
Hmm.
Fantastic. I mean, that's, yeah. Um, you can then debate about whether or not the eggplant was the best choice of vegetable for the ship, but
Right.
the fact that there's a really solid baseline there is
Uh-huh.
good. That's kind of like what we're looking at.
Yep.
Because you can't go into infinite depth anyway.
Hmm.
So yeah, this stuff is great. See the VIP lounge, how it's supposed to work. There you can see that there's a lot of thought going in there, and I would love to see um, this kind of meticulous approach to design being put into not just um, kind of like the base shape of where the different kind of bays
Mm.
and functionalities need to go, but also how that pattern can contribute to that kind of stuff. How it's built up
Hmm.
um, in terms of what does it need to do. The eggplant is a good shape, maybe because it's the fantastic shape for atmosphere re-entry, or because it's the
Right.
most volume, and then
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. So not just this is a cool shape, but why is this a cool shape as well? in terms of function
Yeah.
on top of that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously
Why
there's
does this work?
yeah, the function thing is there and it's important, and obviously there's an element of having to make things look cool as well. But
Hmm. Yeah.
it shouldn't be either or.
No.
Um,
No. And
yep, sorry, go for it.
but there's a lot of studying in here, which is really good. There's
Hmm.
the kind of like the right kind of tangents when coming to a final piece are happening here in terms of study that need be doing. So
Hmm.
that's really good to see.
Yep, absolutely. All right, carrying on, because we've probably got another maybe 10 minutes or so, I guess, for you.
15, yeah, 15 is fine.
Okay.
Um, well, actually, we're gonna make sure that we get through all of these things and that people don't have any question.
Yep.
Um,
Okay,
that's the
so
most important thing. So,
5 minutes for each one. Got three left. All right, so
that's all right.
Tianchi.
Yeah. Um, love what's going on here. There is just a bomb of information in those first few images. They're
Hmm.
just an insane amount of information. This is this is really great. The only thing I'm missing here is why this shape?
Hmm.
Why does this shape matter in this environment? Other than if you can answer that question, everything else following this is pretty much exactly like it's supposed to be done. You come up with a pattern,
Yeah.
you derive shapes from that, you derive silhouettes from that. That drives the composition, that drives the actual final image, and so forth. That's really cool. But the one thing I'm not seeing, like the others, is I'm not seeing how this pattern is interacting with its environment. How is this pattern a reaction to
Hmm.
the kind of environment conditions in which this is living?
Hmm.
But aside from that, I think it's really great. I mean, the smiley face is just
Yeah.
is
It's
hilarious.
a nice touch.
The shape rhythm is really cool. The mid left one,
Yep.
I really love the shape rhythm there, and how
Hmm.
this diamond pattern is interrupting this more spherical shape. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
really cool. There's a nice contradiction there.
Yeah, absolutely. Even on it's applied in that sort of the side distant middle
Hmm.
ground one, but also on the landing platform itself in the bottom. It's got that diamond
Yeah,
versus thing shape
yeah,
language. So yeah, he's applied it really well. And I agree. The process shown here, I think, is more kind of what we're looking for.
yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
One thing that I will say as well when designing, keep in mind that archetypes of geometrical shapes is designed where triangle is aggressive,
Yeah.
strong, spherical is kinder, or rounded off is kinder, and
Hmm.
square shapes and rectangles are more neutral. So
Yep.
if you want to show a overtly hostile kind of way of doing it, then lots of spikes and triangles
Yep.
is great. In terms of illustration, Magic the Gathering set New Phyrexia, or the Phyrexia set,
Mm.
is fantastic because even the mountains have these thorn-like spikes sticking out of
Spiky
them.
mountains. Yep.
You see it, and the second you see, you go like, "This is not a friendly world."
Yeah.
Um, and then you can debate up and down, left and right, whether or not it's cool or original. But the thing
Yeah.
is, it reads really well.
You can't debate the fact that it works.
Yeah,
It just
exactly. It's
works.
like, yeah,
So
it
how
does.
you
It was
bring that in?
cheesy, whatever. No,
Yeah. No, look, you want to make something more dark and gritty and nasty, you add spikes. I mean, it's just it's a given.
it's one of those things. Yeah. Um, so if you guys are having trouble like finding a pattern that interacts with the world, and in terms of thinking like, oh, does it have to be a symbiosis where what we saw before with sort of the mushrooms on the side of the wall, that's kind of symbiotic relationship where it's
Hmm.
a little bit more friendly. Um,
Yeah.
you can go full on hostile where the pattern is actively going against everything in the world
Right.
just to stand out. You can have this very nice,
Hmm.
flowy, round world and these insanely hard triangle patterns
Yeah.
to show and to kind of demonstrate that this race is not friendly. This is not interacting with its environment very well.
No, it's dominating the environment. And
Yeah.
the other thing about that is in terms of image making, like it's an incredibly easy way to create a strong focal point, strong contrast is difference in shape
Hmm.
language, is contrast in shape language.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, most of the environment could be undulating and organic and lovely, but then this big spiky triangle shape in the middle of it. I mean, you'll see it all the time, where the
Hmm.
focal point is just a different shape. So,
Yeah.
that
But
applies to that.
the fun stuff, the fun stuff in that, which I really like to then think about, right? You have the archetypes for triangle and the sphere and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
um, but the host of patterns doesn't stop, right? You have hexagons and octagons, and I was looking at this. Oh shoot! This insane pattern.
Mm.
Now I know that I must have closed the tab, isn't it? But I was looking at all these cool things like patterns in nature and L systems and Romanesco broccolis and what
Right.
have you. Okay, this is great. I'm going to send you a link and maybe you can
Yep.
send it in the chat as well. All right, people can click it.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a delay, so they go like, "What the hell is this link in
What's
chat?"
good?
I don't know if you see it.
It's loading up. It's the Wikipedia page.
All right, but yeah, talking about like basic archetypes. Here's a fun thing. We used to have to discern colors whether a gray was a cool gray or a warm gray. Um, and this was a really tricky exercise trying to figure out where any color group belongs.
Mm.
And if you, oh, this is not the image that you guys are getting. Okay,
Heckles
if you
Bumel, is it?
wait, I'll copy. Yeah, that one. Yeah, perfect. So that's even. Now, if there's a challenge where you have to figure out whether something is a cool or a warm gray is challenging, try to figure out where these shapes belong in terms of friendly or hostile or whatever, because these guys are combining
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of really cool archetypes into the thing where shape archetypes can be treated in black and white, but they definitely don't have to be. You can have a friendly race with a little bit of an edge. So
Mm-hmm.
that one that's on the right, second from the bottom, it's the spheres with the
Yeah, that's
little
awesome.
domes and then the spikes sticking out.
So cool.
If you round that off with the spikes a little bit, it's
Uh-huh.
friendly, but
Yeah,
there's an edge to it here.
I just love that these are, this is bacteria, right? Or something like that, I think, from Heckle. Heckle
Yeah,
tends to do that. It's just, yeah. And another place to get really good inspiration is like electron micrograph, microscopy photos, which show the really small structure of molecules and different things. It's incredible how much pattern and detail goes into things, even at the microscale,
yeah.
or especially at the microscale.
Yeah, it's
Um,
fantastic. And for those who are
mhm.
wanting to know, this is part of the skeleton of a radiolaria, which is a type of protozoa. These are really, really
Yeah,
tiny
right.
mineral things. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
insane.
Yeah, so
But
beautiful.
yeah, so yeah, it's just fantastic. I love, this is the stuff uh, that I live for, man. This is so
Hmm.
cool. So looking at all these at the entries now, where we're almost there, where
Yep.
we see this cool thing happening with Qianqi doing that. You can infuse some of the stuff that we're talking about now in the beginning of this process, and then
Mm.
if you follow the same pipeline through, um, I think you're going to get some really cool, well thought out
Yeah.
designs as a result.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so A.A.R. Scott? A.R. Scott? R. Scott?
Yeah.
So there's not a lot
Um,
here. There's just a final image, I guess.
well, it says it's a horrid image, but I'm happy I was able to push myself this far.
Hmm.
Well, that's really good.
Hmm.
Then I applaud that tenacity. Art is often about going that extra mile in order to improve. And whether or not the image that came from that is good is pretty much always irrelevant. Um,
Yeah. And
it doesn't really
it's
matter.
especially to these challenges where we're really pushing this is about you guys developing and learning
Oh yeah,
and that's the main thing. So even
yeah,
participating and is a great thing, and then completing something is also an achievement. So it's
I
all about
mean,
the
I
learning.
gave a whole lecture on why failure is good and why failing as much as possible is a good thing. So
Yep.
if you feel that you have failed, fear not. That is probably a good thing.
You
But
know,
yeah,
the yeah, the like every failure is a step towards a success. So you're considering it,
hmm,
that's definitely it. Just it's not a setback. It's just one more step you're taking towards something that, eventually will be good.
yeah, it's learning by elimination, really. If you
Hmm.
do everything right, you have no idea the steps you could have made and where that could have led. So it's better just to take a side step and then
Hmm.
fall on your face hilariously.
Yep.
But then at least
But
you
get
know
back up.
what you need to do.
As long as you get back
Mm.
up. All
Yeah,
right.
but I don't really know what to say about the image in terms of judging
Yeah.
it as far as the contest goes. But
Hmm.
I'm happy it's in there. I'm happy A or Scott pushed through and submitted something. So kudos for that.
Yep. Okay, so the last one is Wallant.
Yeah, with Wallen, there's kind of an interesting thing because in the first image, that bottom right
Hmm.
is really clear,
Yep.
and then the rest I'm struggling to kind of make heads and tails what's going on with it, like on the same page.
Hmm.
Like I guess they're color expressions and stuff, so so it's cool. But I really like that split. I like that I'm not actually able to tell completely what's going on in the other ones,
Right. Yep.
um,
There is some sense
because
of
there's
pattern, but it's very chaotic, you know?
yeah. Well, it's fine. Patterns can be super chaotic. That's totally cool.
Hmm.
Um, well, my cat is just stepping on some paper. So every time the mic is on a live show, the cat goes like, "This is my time to shine. If I'm loud, I'll get more attention." But yeah, no, I mean, patterns can be as complicated as you want, but it might be a little tricky to wrap your head around, what's supposed to be going on with that.
Hmm.
I need to move this guy over, otherwise you're only looking at the side of my head all the time. Oh, here we go. Um, the way it's extrapolated in that second image is really cool, and then I love it that in the third image I completely lose him again. Like I have no idea
Yep.
where this third image is going.
Yep.
Um, but it's good because I don't know what that little orange thing is that's repeated in the bottom
In
image.
the bottom.
That little row of lines, but I absolutely love it.
Mm.
Like there's something about that rhythm that goes like I like how that interacts with the environment.
Yeah.
That's cool. Um, so the exploration in there is a lot of fun. This definitely is a type of shape language that I haven't seen
Mm.
uh, very frequently before. It's kind of like reminiscent of wood building, where they have there's a type of wood building, wood crafting, where it's like a no glue kind of thing. So everything is like this
Oh, yeah.
pagan uh, kind of thing. So that's really cool. I love those kind of shapes because they feel very interactive.
Hmm.
The rhythm in there is very interactive. So that's cool. So you feel like these also because it's going down into the ground, right? In a sense. It feels like they interact with their nature in a cool way. I mean, we've seen that
Yep.
before in the top, not to just then pass over. Who was it? Patback, who had the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Stuff goes into
integration,
that as well.
the integration with the environment is like they feel like they're
Mm.
together rather than sort of slapped on top of the other.
Yeah, and I love that there's actually an image in there in the second version
Hmm.
of the palace.
Oh yeah, the
Uh,
that's Mali. Is that from Mali? The mud palaces?
yeah, it's the mud palace
Hmm.
of Timbuktu,
Timbuktu. Okay.
if I remember correctly.
Right.
Which are insane. These structures are really cool. There's
Yeah.
another big tower that's actually a part of that. That whole design process is also fantastic.
Hmm.
Talking about using your environment to build stuff up, the most
Yeah.
that people have done with this kind of building technique exactly is build these tiny huts, and here they use that exact same technique to build a whole palace
Hmm.
out of it, which is, I mean, I can only imagine the king or whatever deity there that gives that like assignment, and then the engineers just have to make it happen. They're like, What the fuck? Like, we're living in huts, man. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? I'm like, no, just
Just
I'd
make
like a
it,
palace, please.
yeah, bigger and make it out of, something that normally crumbles and flows and liquefies. Do
No,
that. It's awesome.
I mean, that is a design challenge right there.
Yeah.
That is not easy. Jeez, imagine, glad you're not those people
Yeah.
because, but I like that. I mean, those sources of inspiration
Mm.
are really cool as well. I like those tangents. Every time I see people going on tangents, it's fun because I shared the thing on Facebook, which I made 2 years ago, where the
Mm.
definition of a concept artist is the most boring person at a party because of all the useless shit that you
Yeah,
know.
that's right.
Um, it's because of this. It's because
Yeah.
someone poses you a problem and you have no idea how to solve it. And if you do know how to solve it, either you've been doing it for a very long time or you haven't done your research well enough.
Right.
That seems to be the general kind of thing, right? Because almost every time a problem arises, you have to do
Yep.
the research again from scratch just to be able to try and figure it out and come up with new and cool solutions that we haven't seen before. And this is why it's important that you pay your designers well because they trudge through Wikipedia and whatever website all day. Also,
Yeah.
scholar.google.com is your
Oh,
friend. It's
yes.
especially for Scholar and Scholar papers.
Yep.
So if you want to get into nitty gritty of like a lot of design and biology stuff,
Mm-hmm.
if you can't find what you want on Google, try going to
Mm.
scholar.google.com, entering it there. They're all PhDs, and you don't, or
Academic
big papers. You
papers.
don't.
Hmm.
Hmm?
They're academic papers, generally.
Yeah, you don't
Hmm.
really need to read them because most of the time when you open them, I already found the answer in the premise. You
Right.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
you have the tiny summary and like, right, that's the thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah, yeah. If you read the
Um,
abstracts, you'll get the gist of everything.
yeah, because
Hmm.
those people know the correct names of the thing that you have no idea what you're looking for. You just call
Right.
it the thing with the when the creature does the thing. You probably find it there.
Yeah, that brings up a good point though, the sort of research and learning aspect of I guess more concept design, but also illustration, because you do have to do similar amounts of, well, not similar. I guess for concept design you're doing way more research because we're talking about design, functionality, and form as well. So, but that's part of the reason I love doing art. It's not just because I love drawing, or it's the constant learning, and not just
Hmm.
about art, but about all sorts of things.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you
So
know.
here's a little anecdote that I'd like to share on that, like as a final thing
Hmm.
when talking about research. I was doing the designs for the underground in the division, which got scrapped, but maybe now it's coming back in. And one of my tasks was to do an underground construction of a tunnel, and it was actually being done in New York at the time, so there was tons of real world kind of thing for there. And I found the New York Metropolitan had a Flickr page where they were documenting it, and there were 96,000 photos on that Flickr account, and I
Right.
looked through every single one of them to find all the photos of the underground construction that I was looking for. Then I was looking at the brands on the machines that I saw in
Hmm.
the images. Then I went to the websites of those brands to find out what the machines were and to compare them, right? You look at the image and then you look at the website where you can see where they list all their machines. You go like, oh, okay, this is a water pump. Okay, this is this kind of thing.
Right.
So I looked through all those images, looked through all those manufacturers to find out, you know, what are these yellow tarps? Why are the tarps yellow here and why are they blue there? What are these scaffolding for? What are these machines? You know, how is this thing being built?
Right.
And it led me to do really cool things. But I spent 3.5 days of 1 week doing the research and then 1.5 days making a concept of a tunnel.
Right.
Uh, and then, when you show it to people, they go like, "Oh, that looks really cool." Yeah, it looks cool because it looks real, and it looks
Yeah.
real because you understand, what needs to be done, um,
Hmm.
which is kind of like that was a luxurious position because normally you might not have 3.5 days, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind of like the length that you should go to, I think.
yeah, that sounds like a long exploration phase. Like,
Mm.
you
For
often
one piece, yeah.
yeah, yeah. you often don't have that much time, so you're sort of blasting through stuff really quickly. Um,
Yeah.
to get that. But you know that also improves with time, I guess. Is if you do also get you learn to get better with your Google foo, I guess, when
Oh,
it comes
yeah,
to
for sure.
research. So
Master of Google.
yeah. All right. Hey, I think we've come to the end of all the pieces and sort of the stuff that we wanted to
Cool.
talk about. So
Yeah.
you know, I hope that was useful for all you guys who are listening. And thanks so much, Titus, for sharing your sort of design knowledge and chops with us. I've learned stuff just from listening to you, which is
Oh,
awesome.
nice.
So
My
and
pleasure, absolutely.
yeah, thanks for giving your time up. It's
Yeah,
absolutely
no,
awesome.
apologies for being kind of vague in the brief. I guess if people still have any questions, you know where to find me. I love talking about this kind of stuff. So, thank you to you and Piotr as well for having me on, so I could
Okay,
talk a little bit about this stuff.
no worries. Glad to have you here. Oh, and as a last thing, is there anything that you'd like to sort of promote, or if you have a Patreon or a project or something that you're working on that you'd like to promote?
Um, well, me and my friend, we're running project-discovery.com. So that's with the little bar in between, like project-discovery.com. And
Hmm.
it's just where we share and talk about, we write articles about our experiences inside and outside of the industry. So it goes from making, how this image was made to how an average day looks like to kind of like the highs and lows of not only our career but also our personal life, how that was influenced by our career. So what happens when you work too much, or when you don't work enough, or
Right.
you know how do you deal with depression or joy? All of it is on there. So if people want to have a more in-depth look on, kind of like the behind the scenes,
Hmm.
then they can find a lot of stuff on there. That's basically it.
Awesome. Sounds cool. So, yeah, thanks again for sharing your time with us. And
My
yeah,
pleasure. Thank you.
okay. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
See ya.